Star Wars 7x7, episode 2775. As we saw at the cliffhanger ending of Chapter 6 of the Book of Boba Fett, Grogu has been presented with a choice. He can either stay with Luke Skywalker and train in the ways of the Jedi and get Yoda's old lightsaber, or he can leave Luke and go back to the Mandalorian and get that cool Beskar chainmail shirt. Which is he going to choose? I've got a pretty solid answer for you about that. Punch it! Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy, and thank you so much for joining me for it. Before we get started, I do want to say thank you to Nathan and to Josh, both of whom became patrons of Star Wars 7x7 just recently. I'm so grateful for their support. Thank you Nathan, thank you Josh, and thank you also to the dozens of patrons who already support Star Wars 7x7 and help bring this daily dose of Star Wars joy to you on a daily basis. Daily dose of Star Wars joy, right? And you can find out more about that whole situation at patreon.com/SW7x7. That's patreon.com/SW7x7. Again, Nathan and Josh and everybody who supports the show, thank you so much. Okay, so let's talk about Grogu. And this kind of builds off what we were talking about in yesterday's episode about the question of recasting Luke, because if Grogu were to decide to stay with Luke, there's enough interest in Grogu, and certainly Lucasfilm has enough interest in Grogu, and of course there's enough interest in Luke Skywalker to give them their own storytelling situation. In other words, their own series on Disney+. The thing of it is that it would depend on them either making a decision now to recast Luke Skywalker or to decide that the CGI situation and the Reese Beecher situation are in good enough condition that they can greenlight a series and say it's going to be great and everybody will be fine with the CGI and the voice. Well, they're not really there yet. They might be in a couple of years, and maybe they could put something in development now, but they're not quite there yet with the technology, and they've not necessarily shown an inclination to recast. So I don't think that augurs well for the possibility of Grogu staying with Luke. There's another argument going around that seems to suggest Grogu won't go with Luke either, and I don't know that I agree with this one necessarily, but we'll talk about it briefly. So in the Knights of Ren comic series, or the Rise of Kylo Ren comic series, I should say, there is some discussion about Luke's Jedi Academy, and Ben/Kylo says that he was Luke's first student. So that does kind of imply that Grogu is not going to be with Luke at this time, and that's perfectly fine, but that's still kind of years down the line from where we are in this particular time period during the Book of Boba Fett. In other words, it's entirely possible that while the Academy and its buildings are still being constructed, Grogu could decide to stay with Luke and ultimately leave Luke at a later date before the Academy gets going and before Ben Solo becomes its first member. So just because of that particular situation, it's not enough for us to say with any certainty that Grogu is going to make that decision one way or the other. And not that any of the other reasons I'm going to throw at you are officially definitive, but the weight of the circumstantial evidence is strongly in favor of Grogu choosing the Mandalorian. First of all is the fact that Grogu is still, for all intents and purposes, a baby. I mean, he's 50 years old, yes, but that is not very old in terms of his species. He's still pre-verbal, and he developed a strong attachment to the Mandalorian, one that was significant enough that Ahsoka was saying to Mando, yeah, we can't let Grogu see you, otherwise it's going to be a problem. Then of course there's Luke's line about Grogu saying his heart isn't in the training, and yeah, that could just be a line that was presented to create drama or to then set up the situation that we saw at the end from a storytelling perspective, but yeah, it certainly doesn't augur well in the situation. And then of course there's the parallel/rhyming, it's like poetry situation with with Star Wars storytelling. It's pretty common for Jedi to leave their mentors. I mean, Luke did it with Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back, so it would not be a surprise in this situation to see a rhyming situation occur as a result, and for Grogu to decide to leave Luke Skywalker and not train with him at this moment in time. Then there's the question of whether Lucasfilm would actually allow Grogu to be sidelined in Star Wars storytelling, and that doesn't seem to be the case at all. I mean, they didn't even wait till Mandalorian Season 3 to bring Grogu back into the mix. They got him into the mix in Book of Boba Fett. So yeah, they had an opportunity to potentially move on from Grogu entirely with the way that Season 2 of The Mandalorian ended, and they had an open opportunity to focus on very Mandalorian-specific things for Season 3 and onward, but it sure seems like they are not necessarily doing that. They want Grogu to be a part of this storytelling. But if there's just one thing, like if I could pick just one thing to point to that makes me utterly convinced that Grogu is going to choose The Mandalorian, it's something that happened in Chapter 5 of the Book of Boba Fett. That, of course, was the chapter where, among other things, the Mandalorian got his new Naboo N1 starfighter, and as Mando is checking out the finished product, he walks around by the astromech port and he says, "Hey, what's going on with the droid port?" To which Pelimato says, "I hogged it out. Knowing you, I figured you wouldn't want an astromech involved in this thing whatsoever." So instead, it's a closed bubble port situation. There's no robot going in there. You know who's going in there? Grogu is going in there. That's the little Grogu second seat for the Naboo N1 starfighter. So that right there is the thing that makes me dead certain that Grogu is going to choose the Mandalorian, because they've already built the second seat for him inside that starfighter. And so there you go. That's why I think Grogu is going to choose the Mandalorian. Not just that, but you know, the other stuff too. But really, just that bubble droid port. Yeah, that's where he's going. That is going to do it for this episode of the show. I would love to hear from you, though. If you have different feelings about this, if you have the same feelings about it, by all means, please let me know. Chime in wherever you see comments for this, for the video version on YouTube. For the audio version, head over to sw7x7.com and comment on the blog post there for it. I would love to hear what you think. And so it just remains for me to say, for this episode of the show, thank you so much for joining me for it as always, and may the Force be with you, wherever in the world you may be.
7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited, or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2021 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.